But behind the smiles, perhaps a different story. Those same documents now revealing that Chris was actively involved in an affair with a coworker, something he had previously denied. But according to Shanann's friend Nickole Atkinson, the last friend to see her alive, there were signs the couple's marriage was straining.
He wasn't being the loving Chris that he normally was. He wasn't touching or hugging or doing stuff like that. And he wasn't being as attentive to the girls as he normally is.
Did she suspect he might have been cheating?
There was speculation, but she didn't want to believe that either, so.
All of this a far cry from the portrait of a happy wife on Facebook gushing about her supportive husband.
He stuck around, and he stuck around because he was the one for me. And he is amazing. And I can't tell you how wonderful he is.
Atkinson had seen Shanann that morning around 2 a.m., she says, dropping her off at home after returning from an out-of-town business trip.
She went inside, turned around and waved at me, and shut the door.
But several hours later, the 34-year-old mother of two isn't answering her phone. She misses a doctor's appointment. Shanann was 15 weeks pregnant.
She was going to get to hear the baby's heartbeat and see how he or she was doing.
Unlock the darkest stories and unravel the mysteries with Dark Crime Box. Subscribe now and step inside the world of true crime like never before.
Growing worried, Atkinson says she went over to their house.
Things were not how I would think that they were supposed to be, I guess. The front door was locked differently than it normally was. I had my son look in the garage to see if her car was there, and it was there, which was really peculiar because Shanann doesn't go places without her car, usually because both of the girls are in car seats.
Atkinson calls Shanann's husband, who she says tells her the last time he saw his wife and kids was that morning around 5:15 when he left for work.
So he tells you everything's normal, she's on a play date.
Yes.
And you didn't buy that?
No, because Shanann, like in my mind, I couldn't figure out why she'd go on a play date without her car.
Atkinson says she tells Watts she's calling the police for a welfare check and that he says he'll meet her at the couple's home.
You knew even then his story was not adding up.
It wasn't making sense to me.
Inside the house, authorities find Shanann's purse, phone, and keys, but no other signs of life.
The girls' beds weren't made. Shanann was very OCD. Everything in her house had a place. Everything was labeled. If something was out of the ordinary, it was really out of the ordinary for her.
Still hopeful Shanann and her girls are alive, the entire community jumps into action.
Tonight, police issued a missing endangered alert.
A pregnant woman and her two daughters missing from Frederick.
By Tuesday afternoon, Chris Watts is talking to local TV stations.
Shanann, Bella, Celeste, if you're out there, just come back. Like, if somebody has her, just please bring her back.
Interviews that first evoked sympathy, but on closer examination, suspicion. Watts revealing he and his wife exchanged words the morning she vanished.
It wasn't like an argument. We had an emotional conversation, but I'll leave it at that. But I just want them back.
His vocal cords are, in my view, constricted. It comes with anxiety and stress.
Former FBI agent and ABC News consultant Brad Garrett points to Watts' body language in those interviews.
When people sort of cross their arms, sort of lock their body down, and then sometimes start rocking back and forth, it's a defense mechanism. That, in combination with a number of other things, I think is potentially telling that he's not telling the truth.
So he does these interviews on Tuesday. What did you think of his demeanor overall?
Yeah, it was very odd. He just was sitting there waiting for something to happen. The last time I talked to him, he said, "I just want to cry." And I looked at him and said, "Why aren't you?"
On Wednesday, everything changed.
A heartbreaking outcome to the story we have been tracking all week, the confession of a father.
I didn't know what to say or do. I don't know. I sat on our bed for I don't even know how long and didn't move because I didn't want to think that they weren't coming back.
Late Wednesday night, Watts is arrested. By Thursday, police were at the oil fields where Watts used to work and within hours found 3 bodies. Court documents revealed they discovered Shanann's body in a shallow grave. The bodies of Bella and Celeste found submerged for days in oil tanks.
You have the right to counsel. You understand? Yes, sir.
In an interview with authorities, Watts filling in the blanks. According to an affidavit, he loaded all 3 bodies into the backseat of his work truck and took them to an oil work site.
If your wife murders your children and then you in a fit of rage murder her, would a logical person then secrete the bodies in such a way, and you take them to work. So again, we'll have to see, but it's a story that has, on the surface, in my view, some implausibility.
There are moments in true crime that begin not with a scream, a chase, or a threat, but with a silence so unnatural that it pulls people forward. A silence heavy enough to crack through routine. A silence that pushes a friend, a neighbor, or a loved one into becoming the first witness of a nightmare they never imagined themselves standing inside. On a hot August morning in Frederick, Colorado, that silence became the trigger. It was a quiet neighborhood, the kind where small talk flowed easier than traffic, and where front yards felt like shared territory. But on that morning, something felt wrong. So wrong it set in motion a series of events that would unravel one of the most haunting crimes of the decade. The first disturbance wasn't a scream. It wasn't an alarm. It was absence. A woman who should have been home wasn't answering her phone. A mother devoted to routine had suddenly vanished. A friend who never disappeared simply disappeared. And in a world where consistency is usually mundane, the lack of it can be deadly. This story begins in that fragile space, between concern and fear, between the assumption that everything is fine and the sinking realization that nothing is fine at all. It begins with a friend who refused to ignore her instincts. A friend who pushed past politeness and stepped into a story she never asked to be part of. A friend named Nickole. Before the world learned about the tragedy. Before interrogations, confessions, and the crushing weight of national headlines. Before the name Chris Watts became synonymous with betrayal, deception, and unthinkable violence, there was a moment of intuition. A moment when one person sensed that something unspeakably wrong was hiding behind the stillness of a suburban home. Nickole had known Shanann well enough to understand her rhythms. The way she balanced motherhood, her health, her ambitions, and her marriage. She had watched her navigate challenges with strength, always pushing forward with a kind of deliberate optimism. Shanann was predictable not in a dull way, but in the way a dedicated mother and organized professional often is. She communicated. She showed up. She cared. When that consistency vanished, it wasn't just odd. It was terrifying. The house stood quiet. No footsteps. No movement. No shadows passing behind the blinds. The kind of stillness that sends chills crawling up a spine long before logic catches up. A stillness that feels staged, deliberate, too perfect. As if someone had scrubbed the air clean of normal life. Nickole didn't know it yet, but she was standing at the edge of a story that would shake the country. And she would later find herself pulled into the emotional fallout of a crime so callous, so calculated, that even investigators would struggle to comprehend the mind behind it. But before any of that came to light, there was only the suspicion, subtle at first, then suffocating. A suspicion that something monstrous was lurking beneath the calm face of a man she had never fully trusted. Inside that house, buried under layers of quiet deception, lived a truth darker than anything she could have imagined. The perfect family image, the smiling photos, the affectionate posts, the scripted charm. It was all a mask. A mask worn by someone capable of unimaginable cruelty. Someone who hid behind gentle tones and calculated innocence. Someone who remained calm in moments when panic should have been instinctive. The day had only begun, but the story was already spiraling into tragedy. As the minutes passed, the weight of the unknown pressed tighter. Every unanswered call, every ignored text, every quiet corner of the house. A sense of dread seeped through the air like thick fog. Nickole tried to reason with herself. Maybe Shanann was resting, maybe her phone had died, maybe everything was fine. But the deeper she fell into that silence, the more it felt like a lie. It's in these early moments that true crime begins. Not with a headline, not with breaking news, but with a feeling. A human instinct that whispers when something is terribly wrong. Behind the walls of that suburban home, a family's story was already over. But outside, a friend was desperately trying to save it. The fear inside Nickole's chest grew heavier as she stood on the porch, feeling the weight of decisions that didn't yet make sense. She didn't know she was about to spark one of the most publicized investigations in modern true crime. She didn't know she was seconds away from making a call that would change everything. All she knew was that the silence was no longer just concerning, it was suffocating. What happened next was instinctive. call for help. A call that would pull law enforcement into the story. A call that would eventually expose secrets, betrayals, and a chilling level of calm in the face of horror. As officers approached the home, a new kind of tension filled the air. The kind that precedes truth in the most painful way. Doors opened. Rooms were checked. Shadows remained still. There were no signs of struggle, yet nothing felt right. The emptiness of the house felt deliberate, felt cleaned, prepared, like someone had tried to erase life itself. Outside, Nickole remained anchored to worry, pacing, scanning, hoping for any sound or sign of the friend she'd come to care so deeply for. But something inside her already knew. The truth wasn't in the house. The truth wasn't in the silence. The truth was in the man who remained strangely calm. A calm that no husband in crisis should ever possess. A calm that investigators immediately noticed. A calm that would soon unravel the darkest truth imaginable. Nickole had never liked his energy. Something about him never sat right. The way he hovered. The way he pretended. The way he seemed disconnected even in moments where connection mattered most. Most people overlooked it, brushed it aside, or chalked it up to personality. But to her, that calmness felt wrong. Artificial. Like the smile was glued on, not born from emotion. She wouldn't say it out loud, not yet. But she had never trusted him. Never believed the image he worked so hard to project. Never felt real kindness from him. She had always loved Shanann and cared for her, protected her, but she had never loved him. Not for a moment. And in the days to come, that instinct would prove chillingly accurate. The search continued. Questions mounted. Worry twisted into fear, then dread, then something darker. But the nightmare hadn't even begun to fully reveal itself. What happened behind closed doors had been calculated, cold, methodical. And the cover-up that followed would expose a level of deception so hollow it echoed through every interview, every camera appearance, every moment where he tried to act like a grieving husband. But on that first day, in that first hour, all that existed was the quiet unraveling of a story soon to shock the world. This is the story of intuition, of a friend who refused to stay silent, of a truth so horrifying it shattered the illusion of a perfect family, of a man whose lies crumbled under the weight of forensic precision, of a woman whose instincts saved an investigation, and of the confession she would one day share, the truth she kept inside for far too long. A truth that began with 6 haunting words. I never loved him, not once, and I only stayed close for her. Before this series continues, you're invited to join this community of truth seekers. Subscribe to Dark Crime Box, where every week we uncover real cases with unsettling detail, precision, and respect for the victims. And as a thank you to our loyal audience, a random subscriber will receive a free gift every single month. Our way of giving back to the people who keep these stories alive. The truth is rarely simple, but it is always worth uncovering. And Nickole's truth is just beginning. Long before the cameras appeared, long before the investigators pieced together the timeline, long before the world knew the full horror of the case, there were whispers beneath the surface. Quiet, subtle cracks in a picture-perfect family that were too faint for most people to see. But some people felt them in the energy, in the atmosphere, in the uneasy silence between smiles that didn't quite reach the eyes. Nickole had always been observant. She noticed details that others missed. The shift in tone, the stiffness in a posture, the quick flicker of discomfort that most people overlook. She read people not by their words, but by the things they tried to hide. And around Chris, something always felt hidden. Not dramatically, not dangerously, but unnaturally. Like a man rehearsing emotions instead of feeling them. When people describe perfect marriages, they talk about chemistry, trust, and connection. But the truth is, perfection often exists only on screens. Captured in filtered moments, brief snapshots of happiness. The real story lives between those pictures. In the quiet corners of a home where frustrations simmer, resentments grow, and secrets form. To the outside world, the Watts family looked flawless. A couple with beautiful children. creating moments of joy despite the weight she carried. She shared openly, loved openly, and cared deeply. Her heart was the kind that beat loudly, visible, expressive, unwavering. But not everyone matched her energy. Not everyone met her vulnerability with their own. And not everyone appreciated the force of her presence. In the early days, the relationship had seemed hopeful. Two people navigating life with shared ambition. But something changed. Slowly at first, then with growing speed. The softness disappeared. The warmth faded. And the small frictions that every couple experiences began to grow into quiet divides. There were moments Nickole remembered vividly. Moments where the atmosphere shifted when he walked into the room. Moments where Shanann felt unheard, unseen, or dismissed. Moments where the man standing beside her looked present, but not connected. Moments where the distance between husband and wife was so sharp it felt physical. These weren't moments of danger, but they were moments of disconnection. Red flags that flickered quietly in the background. Sometimes the signs of a coming storm are not before the story continues. The audience is invited to pause for just a moment. This channel exists to give victims a voice and uncover the hidden truths behind the darkest cases. If you want more real stories told with honesty and detail, subscribe to Dark Crime Box now. And remember, every month, one random subscriber receives a free gift as our way of saying thank you. Now back to the story. The days that followed the disappearance unfolded like a slow descent into darkness. What began as concern spiraled into horror as investigators retraced every moment of the family's final hours. The picture-perfect facade that had once shielded the outside world from the truth shattered under the weight of evidence, contradictions, and a husband whose calmness grew more unnatural with every passing hour. Behind the scenes, investigators analyzed everything: digital footprints, neighbor footage, early morning movements, and the eerie stillness inside the home. While he appeared on camera pleading for his family's return, the technology quietly betrayed him. The truth was already buried in the data, waiting to surface. And when it did, it revealed a man slipping deeper into deception, disconnected from reality, and drowning in secrets he could no longer control. The crime itself was swift and merciless, cold in execution, chilling in aftermath. What followed was a performance, a rehearsed grief, a desperate attempt to manipulate the narrative. But the evidence told a different story, each piece shining a stronger light on the monstrous truth that lay beneath the mask. As the investigation intensified, the calmness he displayed transformed from suspicious to incriminating. Nickole, who had been the first to sense danger, watched the facade crumble. She had always felt something was off, an intuition she never fully understood until the truth exploded into public view. She had never loved him, never trusted him, never felt warmth from the man who would later confess to one of the most disturbing acts imaginable. Before the crime is revealed in full, viewers are reminded to support this channel by subscribing to Dark Crime Box. These stories take time, care, and dedication to tell responsibly. Becoming part of this community helps keep these narratives alive, helps honor the victims, and brings you into a space where truth is told without fear. When the bodies were found, the emotional shockwave hit the community with devastating force. The courtroom became a place of truth and consequence. Faced with overwhelming evidence, he pleaded guilty, receiving multiple life sentences with no chance of parole. There was no redemption, no explanation that could ever justify the horror. The judge's words sealed his fate, but the emotional wounds left behind would linger far longer. Family members spoke through unbearable grief. Investigators detailed the brutality in muted, heavy tones. And the world watched as the mask of a seemingly gentle man dissolved into the reality of a calculating killer. Yet through all of it, Nickole carried the burden of knowing she was the first to sense something was wrong. Her instincts began the chain of events that led to justice, and her truth, spoken years later, became a powerful reminder that intuition should never be ignored. In the end, the community honored the victims by remembering their lives rather than their deaths. The tragedy left lasting scars, but it also left warnings about the masks people wear, the darkness they hide, and the fragile line between affection and danger. The story closes, but the questions it raises remain sharp and haunting. Before we end, viewers are invited to join a community that values truth, empathy, and justice above all. Subscribe to Dark Crime Box, turn on notifications, and help ensure stories like this continue to be told with dignity and clarity.